Hello fellow Misfortunates and welcome to the Rank 1 Kai'Sa guide. In the current meta, solo queue players seem to be slowly but surely forgetting about Kai'Sa as a champion, her pick rate decreasing more and more across all ranks. If you however think that Kai'Sa would not be a strong AD carry because of this, you might be in for a nasty surprise the next time you are playing against a true Kai'Sa main. Yes, there are AD carries that are easier to play and more popular right now, but players that are willing to master the ins and outs of Kai'Sa are getting rewarded with ridiculous win rates. In fact, the rank 1 Kai'Sa player is currently climbing with a 73% win rate, and now I will show you exactly how that's possible. If you copy their runes and item builds and implement their strategies in your own ranked games, you should see very nice results yourself. So this player's rune page is fairly standard and straightforward. Like most Kai'Sa players, they always go for Hail of Blades, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection and Ravenous Hunter with magical footwear and biscuit deliveries secondary. Their shards are attack speed, adaptive force and armor when they are playing against a traditional AD carry. Against a mage bot lane, magic resist of course. Hail of Blades is hands down the best keystone for Kai'Sa in the entire game, because being able to get 3 attacks off almost instantly means your target will be at 3 stacks of plasma right away. If you then also throw your W into the mix, which adds another 2 stacks of plasma, you can consistently trigger your passive execute damage for a quick, bursty trade. This is incredibly valuable at every stage of the game, allowing you to win exchanges during the lane phase and execute priority targets in mid and late game teamfights. Kai'Sa's late game is super strong, which means if you manage to merely survive in your lane, you are already doing quite well. With Taste of Blood and Biscuit Delivery buffing up your early game, you will be able to reach your enormous late game power spikes much more consistently. Eyeball Collection is simply taken by process of elimination, but free attack damage is always good on any AD carry. Speaking of which, magical footwear is also always good on any AD carry, because not needing to spend 300 gold on boots means you get your items 300 gold earlier. And AD carries scale with items way harder than most other champions, so yes please. Ravenous Hunter got nerfed insanely hard over the course of the last months, but Kai'Sa still makes good use of the Omnivamp in the late game due to her mixed damage types. The rank 1 player's item builds are a little more convoluted, but no worries, I'll explain everything in detail for you. Depending on the matchup, the rank 1 player either goes for a burst build or for a tank slayer build. Now the tricky part is of course to decide when to go for which, and it isn't always clear. Sometimes you even have to mix and match the 2 builds depending on your needs. To decide what's best, you have to take multiple factors into account. The more fed you are and the fewer tanks the enemy team has, the more heavily should you lean towards the burst build. The more fed the enemy frontline is and the longer the game goes in general, the better the tank slayer build will be in the end. I will present both builds to you in their purest forms, and then you can simply pick the elements you need in your individual games. The pure burst build goes as follows. You start with Serrated Dirk and Noon Quiver, which are the 2 strongest component items in the game. Both of these are significant early power spikes that should not be underestimated. You can brawl quite heavily with just these 2 components. From here, you first upgrade Noon Quiver to Gale Force, which will immediately unlock your evolved Q, and then upgrade Serrated Dirk to Collector. With these core items, you are both very hard to catch and will be able to finish off squishy enemies left and right with your 2 new execute effects. Don't be afraid to occasionally use Gale Force offensively to combo it with Collector's passive, since you still have defensive disengage options with your E and your ultimate. Only now are you supposed to upgrade your magical boots and press the subscribe button. Your next item should be Runan's Hurricane, unlocking your evolved E and spreading your passive to multiple enemies at the same time during teamfights. Afterwards, Infinity Edge is your biggest damage increase, taking full advantage of all the critical strike chance you've bought. For your final purchase with the burst build, a semi-defensive utility item should be optimal so you have more leeway in the late game. The pure tank slayer build on the other hand looks rather different. No component item shenanigans here, since you can't afford to buy a lethality item. Instead you go straight for Kraken Slayer and then buy Blade of the Ruined King for your core items. If you can expect to get good value out of magic resist in any specific matchup, Blade of the Ruined King should be swapped for Wit's End. With this build, you will also unlock your evolved Q after 2 items and even your evolved E as soon as you finish boots. Your next item is Ginzo's Rageblade, amplifying your on-hit item and also serving as your crit payoff. This in combination with your passive will allow you to shred through any tank, no matter which items they are building. Afterwards you go for Lord Dominic's Regards for maximum tank shredding, and then finish off your build with any of the aforementioned utility items or with the remaining on-hit item. Again, both of these builds are rather extreme, and in most games it will be optimal to start mixing them after your 2 core items. Your skill order is the standard Qmax into Emax with 1 early point in W, and now that we got all of the theory out of the way, we can finally have a look at how our rank 1 player utilizes Kai'Sa's abilities to dominate the solo queue ladder. While a Kai'Sa-Leona lane has very strong all-in potential, they need to be careful not to lose too much health due to range disadvantage. Playing against a Caitlyn is especially annoying for Kai'Sa because you merely have an attack range of 525, which is below average for an AD carry, while Caitlyn's 650 is one of the biggest in the game. Patience is key here, and especially when your lane partner takes so much unnecessary poke damage, you have to play it slow. As long as you don't get ahead of yourself, you should be fine. Kai'Sa scales into the late game way harder than most other champions, so all our rank 1 player has to do here is to not throw during lane phase. Especially when your support makes mistakes like these, you simply have to accept the fact that lane phase will likely not be your time to shine. However, there is one situation in this lane phase that I'd like to bring to your attention because it will help you to better understand Kai'Sa's strengths and shortcomings. Please look at this gank and try to pinpoint Kai'Sa's issues here. I recommend to not do this in silence because if you actually verbalize the answer, even just to yourself, you will have a bigger learning effect. Okay, let's go. So first of all, Kai'Sa is not able to follow up on Sejuani's engage and still eats a Rakan knockup in a desperate attempt to get an auto off against Caitlyn. Obviously our rank 1 player should have just accepted the fact that they cannot contribute there and focused on dodging Rakan's spell. Kai'Sa cannot do anything about her lackluster range, and your only way of compensating for that is by increasing your mobility. This clip shows you perfectly how important Kai'Sa's ultimate is for her to function properly as a champion. Had this gank happened post level 6, Kai'Sa could have killed Caitlyn instantly and Viego's counter gank wouldn't have mattered at all. It is almost comical how hard Kai'Sa gets schooled by Caitlyn during this potential cleanup phase simply because of range disadvantage. Without her ultimate, her Gale Force dash or her invisibility on E, Kai'Sa has no choice but to sit there and take it. But this is also where the rank 1 player's skill and knowledge come into play. Many other Kai'Sa mains would have been too frustrated or inexperienced to avoid Caitlyn's net from out of vision. Rest in peace, Sejuani. In any case, you should also not underestimate the effect of classical conditioning in League of Legends. Most opponents, after being able to bully you in the lane phase, will fail to flip that mental switch as the game progresses. They try to keep asserting their dominance, but simply end up getting baited. As you can see, Kai'Sa's ultimate is your number 1 tool to circumvent Kai'Sa's range disadvantage. Despite being 1 level down, our rank 1 player was able to easily out-duel Caitlyn, and Leona's help wasn't even needed. And it only gets better from there. In mid-game skirmishes, your evolved Q, Gale Force and your ultimate are all the tools you need. With these you'll be able to both get on top of your opponents and burst them down before they can even react. Playing around the cooldowns of your crucial mobility tools is truly at the core of the rank 1 player's consistent success. Your ultimate, and also Gale Force to some extent, are the difference between an immobile 525 ranged champion and a crazy unavoidable killing machine. As soon as you're off bot lane tower duty, you will also get way more fighting opportunities, and this is where you can start snowballing. Following up on your allies' crowd control is super easy when playing Kai'Sa, and also one of the biggest strengths of the champion. Attention! Nasty kill steal in 3, 2, 1. We all saw that, Nasus. Anyway, you should never get angry at something like that, ever. Enemy dead equals enemy off the map equals good for you. And picks like these are also huge fighting opportunities because you now have numbers advantage. Kai'Sa makes it impossible for the fed Yasuo to connect his stun by using her mobility spells, and due to that kiting she ultimately survives. Thanks Nasus, you more than made up for earlier. And as always, after winning a fight, look for objectives to take. If you don't do this, getting kills is effectively useless. Okay, so in this next fight I want you to really focus on Kai'Sa's positioning and ability usage, because this is exactly what you need to do if you want to carry your ranked games. The first thing to take away here is that safety trumps everything. Note how the rank 1 player always stays at max attack range and even patiently waits out Yasuo's wind wall. They also use Gale Force defensively to avoid taking any damage and hold onto Kai'Sa's ultimate as long as possible to force the enemy to overcommit. Just a flawlessly played ADC teamfight, which fortunately really can be broken down to these exact underlying principles. Once more, winning a fight only progresses the game when you take objectives afterwards, but you have to make sure to choose an objective that you can actually take down before your opponents start to respawn. With Nasus deciding to ignore Baron in favor of taking mid lane towers, you have to just let it be and retreat. Kai'Sa can consider herself very lucky to get away unscathed after this mistake. Or does she? After failing to retreat in time, blue team is now still on the map with low health and a bunch of unspent gold in their pockets. This means they now have to concede Baron themselves, or even worse, die trying to defend it. Kai'Sa's team is paying a huge price here, and they even lose their bot lane inhibitor as well. Anyway, in a team fight from full health, our rank 1 player should still be able to shine with their flawless Kai'Sa skills. And both your burst damage and your ultimate are perfect to punish your opponent's positioning mistakes in the late game. The longer the game, the more each death matters, and with respawn timers being that long, you will eventually be able to win the game on the spot. If you want to master a mechanical champion like Kai'Sa, you of course cannot purely rely on macro and decision-making skills. You have to get down all her tricks and combos too, and in order to help you with that, I've prepared a video that you can access by clicking the link on your screen right there.